Mr. Mayor, will you apologise to hundreds of thousands of Londoners that you've just called far right for protesting this weekend? You say nothing about the thousands who get arrested. You say nothing about the 400+ people who were arrested this year at Notting Hill Carnival, the stabbings, the deaths and the rapes. So will you apologise? Because yes, there was violence against the police. No one is saying that's okay. That is not okay. But there's conflicting reports about who actually committed that violence, and some reports say it was actually by stand-up to racism and anti-protesters. So will you apologise to British Londoners, which is part of our diversity? We're such a brilliant, diverse capital, because all you ever do is disagree with people and call them far right. Why are they far right? Is it because they love the Union Jack? Is it because they love this country?
Okay, I think you've answered the question now. Thank you very much.
Does that...
In terms of the second question, look, I think our flag is something that should be a symbol of unity, not a symbol of hatred. And I've been quite clear. There were tens of thousands of there were tens of thousands of people at the march on Saturday who were not far right. But the march was organised by the far right. We can't run away from the fact that Stephen Yaxley Lennon organised the march. He's a far right activist and a violent racist with a string of criminal convictions. We can't escape the fact that on the platform, Elon Musk was on the platform on the big screens. What did Elon Musk say? You either fight back or you die. That's the truth. Also, the platform was a French politician who's been convicted for racial hatred. Also was a Spanish influencer who said the government are taking our money and financing, and I quote, the great demographic replacement of our nation. Also, by the way, was a Dutch far-right commentator with a T-shirt saying generation remigration. Also was a far-right Belgian politician. By the way, they don't mind foreigners if they're racist. It's only when they're people of colour that they don't like foreigners. And what is this?
Mr. Mayor, I'm sure you can go on, but we do also have to get to the other questions that were asked and allow the other Assembly members to answer. Assembly Member Susan Hall.
Thank you, Charlene. It's somewhat typical that the Mayor started his answer by blaming somebody else, because that's what he does all the time, and some of us are sick to death of it. So if I start off, I agree with my colleague here about front counters. We're on the Police and Crime Committee together, and we have been fighting this from the minute we knew about it. The Deputy Mayor knew about it as well in November. It's such a shame that they don't think to share this with us, because we'd have started campaigning against it straight away. So my colleague has answered beautifully over that, and we will continue to fight because people want their front counters. The Mayor promised he'd keep them, but you cannot rely on anything he says. And then we go to the far right. Well, let me tell you, we are sick to death of being called the far right. The number of people that went on that march this weekend, they're not political at all. They're just very, very fed up. They're very fed up with this Labour government and the problems they're causing. They've been fed up with this Labour mayor for a very long time, and they wanted to walk through the streets so that people would know. And the fact that they're carrying, Union Jacks or the Union flag or the St George's flag, that doesn't mean anything other than that they're proud of their flag, and as am I, let me tell you. They're not far right, and I wish you'd stop calling people far right. This is what he always used to do to opponents.
Okay, Susan Hall, are you going to be answering the question?
I am.
I don't believe you are answering the question.
Well, I think I am, but I'll move on to the next bit if you like. Carnival. Now, the police have to be there at Carnival, 7,000 of them on each day. It's cost us all an absolute fortune. Thank God they had the foresight to do lots of raids before the Carnival, because on one of them they found, or in several of them, 11 firearms which they had intelligence to say they were going to be taken to the carnival. Had they have done, I suspect we would have had murders this year. Thank God we didn't, and I put that down to damn good policing before the event started. We have to have these things. I think there were 5 stabbings. The amount of police officers that are injured every single year is nothing short of a disgrace. No police officers should ever be attacked, whether it's a march, a festival, a carnival. It's outrageous. And this I will agree with the Mayor on, because I've been saying it too. It is a victim of its own success. The roads are not wide enough to keep the carnival there. And every year you just hold your breath and hope that nothing fatal is going to happen. I've heard some nonsense this morning, Mr. Mayor. Absolute nonsense. Now, this job tax, or employers' national insurance increase, which has been brought in by the Labour government, is actually costing businesses a fortune, and of course will lead to more and more people losing their jobs. Now, if we look at the fire brigade, how exactly is this dreadful working tax going to affect them?
Well, this is not the first time over the last 9 years where a government has brought in national insurance employers' contributions. We've got some experience from previous government decisions in relation to what happens.
Can we just concentrate on this, please, on the question? Every answer from you is like a history lesson on previous Conservative governments. Can we just talk about the budget that is in front of you today? Can you tell me how this dreadful job tax that your government has just brought in is going to affect the fire brigade?
So because we've experienced with the previous government bringing in national insurance contributions for employees, we know what's happened in the past, which forms our view in terms of what may happen in the future. And in the past, what the government's done when they've raised national insurance contributions for employees is to give us the monies that would cost us as an employer to pay that contribution. So we're hopeful, and this was a question asked to the Chief Financial Officer about an hour ago, that in the next 2 weeks we'll have a better idea of the contribution from the government, the current government, in relation to this contribution. That's as I understood it.
Yeah, what is the actual figure? I'll ask Faye, she'll give me a straightforward answer. Faye, how much will it cost the fire brigade, please?
I knew you were going to ask that, and I was trying to search it while you were talking, so can I come back to you in the meeting?
I think
I've got the answer.
Oh,
you're out of time.
He always knows the answer.
I think you will.
No, I'm sure I should have asked David, who always knows the answer. David, can you just tell me what that figure is? I'm sure everybody round the table would like to know.
I think
Dave,
there was...
Mr. Mayor, can I not just hear this figure?
Those are the rules, I'm afraid, Chair.
Do you know, if you knew the answer, which you don't, then you could have given it to me within time. You're a disgrace.
Assembly member, if what Mr. Bellamy is going to say is one figure, say the figure, please.
I'm afraid it doesn't look like one figure. It looks like quite a few figures. Maybe next month.
However, I did hear an undertaking that the Assembly Member Hall would be written to, and I would urge you to do that as soon as possible.
You talk about the good work that the police force is doing, and there is an awful lot of good work, but it's surely in danger with this latest budget. If we do lose 2,300 officers, all of this will be put at jeopardy. This is serious, Sadiq. We all know you will end up with a lot more money between now and the final budget. And I would like you to commit to putting that money into policing so that Londoners can feel safe.
Thank you. I think we're in danger of going
No, I'd like an answer, please.
Yeah, we're in danger of going to a bit of to and fro. I think the Mayor, I think if you could answer...
Then, Chair, ask him to answer.
Let me finish. Chair, Mr. Mayor, if you can answer by just telling the committee how you would approach, if you were to get additional money coming in, how you approach that in terms of decisions to the Metropolitan
I can't comment on hypotheticals.
Of a serious politician.
I have apologised for my social media a long time ago, and many times, and I have learnt from that. I rarely use.
What have you learnt?
I've learnt that you have to be very, very careful when you just flick on things without thinking twice about it. But I've apologised for that, and I've learnt.
They're not just hurty words.
And I've learnt from I have learnt from my mistakes.
Sadiq Khan.
Well, this is very serious because it affects me and my personal safety and my family's personal safety.
Would you feel safe in a London run by someone who tweeted and liked those things?
I'm very careful what I say now, and I've thought long and hard about this, Tom. I fought 3 council elections. I've fought 3 parliamentary elections. This is my 3rd mayoral election. The Tory candidate is the most dangerous candidate I fought against.
Well, I think that's an outrageous comment.
What happens when those who claim to defend justice are caught protecting their own interests, when violence against police officers is brushed aside as if it never happened, and when the country's leaders pretend that scandals vanish if they refuse to speak of them? This is not just about one protest or one scandal. It is about the hypocrisy rotting the core of Britain's politics. Susan Hall is calling it out. Sadiq Khan is scrambling to hide behind excuses, and Keir Starmer is standing silent as his government sinks deeper into disgrace. Susan Hall's words land like a hammer blow on the carefully built facade of Sadiq Khan's administration. She does not waste time with politeness because the facts speak for themselves. Nearly 900 arrests at the September 7th rally. Police officers punched, spat on and showered with objects as they tried to do their jobs. And yet, instead of outrage filling the airwaves, instead of headlines screaming for accountability from those who carried out the violence, there was silence. An eerie, calculated silence. Hall asked the question that nobody else dares to ask. Where is everybody's condemnation? Why is it that when police are accused of being too heavy-handed, politicians and commentators swarm the scene like vultures? But when officers themselves are assaulted in broad daylight, those same voices disappear. Her words cut deep because they strike at a double standard that ordinary Britons have long sensed, but rarely hear spoken aloud. If accountability is demanded from police officers, should it not also be demanded from protesters who turn violent? If the media insists on endlessly dissecting the conduct of law enforcement, why do they not hold lawbreakers to the same moral standard? Hall has shifted the debate from the question of policing methods to the question of hypocrisy, and she has done so by anchoring her argument in cold, undeniable numbers. Nearly 900 arrests, hundreds of officers attacked. This is not opinion, it is fact, and here is where Sadiq Khan finds himself exposed. As London's mayor, he cannot pretend he does not know what happened. He cannot claim ignorance of the violence that took place under his watch. Yet what has been his response? Not outrage, not solidarity with those officers who stood in the line of fire, but an empty silence, a silence that looks less like restraint and more like complicity. For Khan, condemning protesters risks alienating parts of his political base. Better to stay quiet and hope the fury blows over. But Hall will not let him get away with it. By framing her intervention around the simple question of why society excuses violence when it suits a certain narrative, she has forced Khan into a corner. Either he acknowledges the truth she has laid bare, or he stands revealed as a leader who values politics over principle. This is not just about Sadiq Khan's credibility. It bleeds directly into the wider crisis of leadership embodied by Keir Starmer. Because while Hall was demanding answers on protest violence, Starmer was standing at the dispatch box defending a Prime Minister who had appointed Peter Mandelson as Britain's ambassador to the United States, despite Mandelson's long and murky links to Jeffrey Epstein. The facts are not hidden. Epstein was convicted in 2008 for crimes involving underage girls. He was disgraced worldwide. Yet Mandelson, his so-called friend, continued their relationship, and the Prime Minister still thought him fit to represent the United Kingdom on the global stage. When pressed, Starmer defended this disgraceful decision with the arrogance of a man who believes that silence, stonewalling and waiting out the storm are the same as leadership. What connects these two moments, Khan's silence on protest violence and Starmer's silence on the Mandelson scandal, is the same disease that corrodes trust in politics: selective outrage. Leaders rage when it serves them, they go mute when it threatens them. The moral compass of this country is being twisted beyond recognition. Susan Hall's intervention matters not just because she exposed hypocrisy in policing, but because she placed it side by side with the wider rot of Westminster itself, where nearly 1,000 people can be arrested and the police themselves brutalised with barely a whisper of condemnation, and when at the same time our leaders can defend a man tied to one of the darkest scandals of our age. What message does that send to the public? It tells them that justice is not blind, it is partisan. It tells them that power shields its own while leaving ordinary citizens to fend for themselves. This is the pitiful state in which our politics now rests. The Prime Minister may hope the Mandelson scandal fades into the background. Sadiq Khan may hope the outrage over protest violence is forgotten. Keir Starmer may hope that silence looks like strength. But Susan Hall's challenge ensures it will not. She has ripped open the wound for all to see, demanding to know why police officers' suffering is ignored, demanding to know why leaders defend the indefensible, and demanding to know that what has happened to the moral compass of the people who govern us. The silence of Khan and Starmer is not strategy, it is cowardice, and cowardice will not survive the scrutiny that has now been unleashed. The silence of Sadiq Khan and Keir Starmer is not just about avoiding difficult conversations. It is about shaping the story, controlling what the public is allowed to feel angry about, and burying truths that would otherwise shake their authority. But the problem for them is that the truth has a way of clawing its way to the surface, no matter how hard they try to suppress it. And that is exactly what Susan Hall is forcing into the open. She refuses to allow this double standard to become normalised. She refuses to let the political elite decide which outrages deserve attention and which ones are swept under the carpet. Think about it. When protesters clash with police and claim they were treated unfairly, the headlines multiply for weeks. Politicians trip over themselves to give statements about peaceful demonstrations and the importance of protest rights. Yet when those very same protesters turn violent, nearly 1,000 arrests are made and police officers are bloodied in the line of duty. What do we hear? Nothing. No speeches about the rights of officers to be safe in their jobs. No media storm about the brutality directed at them. Just silence, a silence that speaks louder than any words. Hall's intervention is not comfortable because it exposes the truth everyone in power already knows. Outrage in Britain is selective and it is being weaponised for politics. And what of Keir Starmer in all this? Here is a man who claims to be restoring integrity and honour to politics, yet when the Mandelson scandal emerged, his first instinct was not to demand transparency, not to call for accountability, but to shield the Prime Minister and, by extension, Peter Mandelson himself. The very fact that Mandelson's relationship with Jeffrey Epstein is still being defended in the highest offices of this land should terrify every parent, every victim of abuse, every citizen who still believes that justice has meaning. Mandelson is not just any figure. He is a close ally of Starmer's Labour machine, a man whose influence reaches into the deepest corridors of power, and instead of demanding his removal, Starmer's defence has been nothing but a disgrace. Susan Hall's clash with Khan and Starmer may look, at first glance, like two separate issues. One about protest violence, the other about a political scandal. But they are two sides of the same coin. Both reveal a political class that bends morality to its own needs. A political class that protects its friends and silences its critics. Hall is forcing the country to look at that hypocrisy head on. When she asks, where is the condemnation? She is not just talking about attacks on police officers. She is asking why the people in charge decide what counts as wrong and what counts as acceptable based on who it benefits. When Starmer defends Mandelson, he is showing that political loyalty outweighs moral clarity. And when Khan refuses to condemn violent protesters, he is showing that political calculation outweighs justice. This is how public trust dies, not in one single scandal, not in one single act of violence, but in the drip of double standards. Every silence, every evasive answer, every shrugged off scandal teaches the public one lesson, that those at the top believe they are untouchable. But the public are not blind. They see the numbers, they hear the excuses. They know that if a police officer lays a hand on a protester, it will be headline news for weeks. But if a protester smashes a bottle over the head of an officer, the story dies in hours. They know that if a minister had even the faintest link to a disgraced figure like Epstein, there would be outrage. Unless that minister is a friend of Mandelson, in which case it is painted as an obsession to even ask questions. Hall is tearing down that illusion piece by piece. By putting Khan's silence and Starmer's defence side by side, she has exposed something that politicians fear most. The truth that their moral compass no longer exists. And once the public begins to see that clearly, the collapse of trust is unstoppable. Silence cannot hide cowardice forever. The question now is not whether Khan or Starmer will be embarrassed by these revelations, but whether they will survive the public reckoning that follows. Because when trust is broken, when hypocrisy is revealed, the people do not forgive easily. The deeper this crisis unfolds, the more obvious it becomes that Britain is not dealing with isolated failures of leadership, but with a culture of denial running through the highest levels of government. Sadiq Khan, in his refusal to confront the violence at the protests, has shown that political comfort is valued above the safety of his own police force. Keir Starmer, in shielding Mandelson and standing silently while the Prime Minister dismisses one of the most disturbing scandals in modern politics, has shown that protecting allies is valued above protecting the truth. And what does that leave the British public with? Leaders who no longer serve principle, but only power. The scandal is not simply the events themselves, the attacks on officers, or Mandelson's links to Epstein. The real scandal is the reaction, or rather the deliberate lack of one. It is the silence that lingers like a fog over Westminster. Susan Hall's question, where is the condemnation, echoes far beyond the walls of City Hall or the Commons chamber. It has become the question that the whole country is asking of its rulers. Where are their voices when the victims are police officers beaten in the streets? Where are their voices when the victims are children whose suffering was exploited by men like Epstein? Where is their moral outrage when the evidence is clear and undeniable that silence is not accidental? It is the calculated response of politicians who believe the public will grow tired, lose interest, and move on. But that calculation is a dangerous gamble, because every time politicians try to bury a scandal, the scandal festers. The silence itself becomes proof of guilt. Hall understands this. By hammering the numbers, nearly 900 arrests, hundreds of officers attacked, she forces the story back into the spotlight. By linking that silence to Starmer's defence of Mandelson, she creates a single narrative, a Britain where those in power protect their own and abandon the rest. It is a narrative that ordinary people recognise because they feel it in their daily lives. Rules for them, excuses for the powerful. And what does it say about Starmer's Labour, about Khan's London, about the Prime Minister's government, that they cannot answer the simplest of moral questions? Was it right to stay silent when officers were attacked? Was it right to appoint a man tied to Epstein? Was it right to defend that appointment rather than apologise for it? These are not complex policy debates. They are questions of right and wrong. Yet the answers never come, because to answer would mean admitting failure. So instead, we are given stonewalling, evasions, and silence dressed up as strength. This is why Susan Hall's intervention matters so much. It is not just another political jab. It is a direct challenge to the narrative machine that keeps the public subdued. By dragging protest violence and the Mandelson scandal into the same spotlight, she forces a reckoning that those in power hope to avoid. Khan cannot hide forever behind platitudes about peaceful protest. Starmer cannot hide forever behind empty claims of confidence in the Prime Minister. The silence that once protected them is now the very thing exposing them. The public can see it for what it is: cowardice, hypocrisy and betrayal. And this betrayal is not abstract. It has consequences. Every officer who went home bruised and bloodied from that rally feels it. Every victim of abuse who watches Mandelson still standing near the levers of power feels it. Every citizen who asks why the rules never apply to the powerful feels it. Hall has given voice to that anger, and once spoken, it cannot easily be silenced again. The cracks in the political facade are widening, and silence will not be enough to hold them together. The truth is unavoidable now. Britain's leaders can no longer hide behind silence, no longer pretend that the outrage is selective. No longer hope that the scandals will simply vanish into the background noise of politics. Susan Hall has forced the reckoning into the open, and the questions will not go away. Nearly 900 arrests. Officers assaulted, media silence, Mandelson's ties to Epstein defended from the highest offices of government. A Prime Minister who chose to look the other way, a Labour leader who chose to shield him, a London mayor who chose to stay quiet. Each fact is undeniable. Each silence is damning. This is bigger than Sadiq Khan, bigger than Keir Starmer, bigger than Peter Mandelson. It is about whether Britain has any moral compass left at all. When leaders defend the indefensible, when they ignore violence against their own police, when they stand behind figures tied to one of the darkest scandals in living memory, they do not just fail in office, they fail the nation. Every silence is a betrayal of the public who trusted them. Every denial deepens the rot. And every attempt to wait out the storm only guarantees that the storm will grow stronger. Susan Hall has lit a fire that cannot be smothered. She has made the hypocrisy visible, the cowardice undeniable, and the double standards impossible to ignore. The silence that once protected the powerful has become their greatest weakness, because now the people are watching. Now the questions will not stop, and now the reckoning is coming for those who thought they could escape it.